So Trump is suing CBS for $10 billion. That's billion with a B.
$100 billion.
The lawsuit alleges that CBS deceptively edited the Kamala Harris interview in a way that puts Trump at a political and unfair disadvantage. So is this a valid lawsuit or just a Hail Mary? Let's see. The lawsuit is based on a Texas statute called the Deceptive Trade Practices Consumer Protection Act. What this law does is it prohibits in Texas false, misleading information or deceptive practices in trade commerce and in a manner that damages consumers. So two things are happening here. Number one, the Trump team is trying to apply a statute that was devised for trade commerce to an interview carried out with a politician. The lawsuit alleges election interference, and that might be more important than just damage because it's preparatory for what the Trump team might be trying to do. But the big question is, if deceptive advertising is at the root of the lawsuit, why go to Texas when there are 49 other states and the District of Columbia that have laws on the books that protect against deceptive advertising? I'm going to give you that answer at the end of the video, but first let's see why this lawsuit is foundationally weak. Number one, the First Amendment, which seems to be very important to the GOP unless they're trying to file a lawsuit. CBS can easily argue that all TV interviews from all stations are edited and that editing choices are protected under the First Amendment. Number two, we said that the basis for the lawsuit is this statute, and this statute may not be applicable to this case because this statute governs commercial transactions, and CBS can fairly easily argue that an interview with a presidential candidate during a presidential election year is not commercial transaction, it's just editorial content. Number three, lack of standing, which is a term that says that the party that's bringing the lawsuit really can't bring the lawsuit because something is missing from the requirements. And specifically what's missing is what's included in section 1750 of the statute, because this section says that the plaintiff actually has to prove that they suffered damages. And CBS can easily prove that Trump suffered no actual and direct damages. Now, he's not going to lose Texas for sure, and if he loses the election overall, it would be hard to prove in court that that loss is a direct result of this interview. It would be just as easy to prove that his loss is caused by another interview when he said this about Liz Cheney.
Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her, okay? Let's see how she feels about it.
But even if there were actual damages, CBS could invoke the so-called public figure standard or actual malice. And that means that a public figure has a higher standard than you and me would have in court to prove that there were actual damages that are punishable and payable. And Trump would have to prove that CBS acted with the direct intent to damage him and with reckless disregard for the truth. They would have to prove, not just argue, that CBS intentionally edited the footage that way with the specific intent to damage Trump. For example, they would have to produce text messages or emails that are internal to CBS that prove that that was the intention. Where did I see that before? And last but not least, the choice of the venue, also known as forum shopping. Remember when I talked about filing the lawsuit in Texas and specifically in Amarillo? Let's find out what that might be. It could be because that venue is virtually a single judge venue. Usually a lawsuit is assigned randomly to a judge within a pool of judges. In Amarillo, 95% of the cases are assigned to one judge only. This guy, who happens to be a little sus. Number one, he's a member of the Federalist Society, if that tells you anything. Number two, he was a Trump appointee, which doesn't really say anything in particular. Number three, it has a very long history of ultra-conservative rulings. And that ruling included this, and this decision was unanimously overruled by the Supreme Court. Forum shopping isn't lawful, but it's often done unless it's done very overtly. CBS will likely ask for a recusal. The judge, as a Trump loyalist, will not recuse himself, but that decision will more than likely be very carefully reviewed on appeal. So I gave you 5 different points, which again begs the question, is this lawsuit valid or a Hail Mary? Let me put it this way. If I were Trump, I'd start practicing chucking that football as far away as possible.